Good day, ministry company and friends. We are going through book of Acts, and today is chapter 24. We are learning that Apostle Paul was brought to see this governor by name Felix. Now, Felix wanted to hear what Apostle Paul had to say and how he wanted to defend, but Felix was waiting for the accusers. And it's interesting that Apostle Paul had granted this opportunity to speak on front of his accusers. It reminds us of Psalm 23, that God is our shepherd, but there was a part that it says that he will prepare a feast on front of your enemies. He will prepare a table where you sit and you eat in front of your enemies. This is similar situation is happening with Apostle Paul, and not his enemies. He didn't had them as the enemies of the religious leaders of Jerusalem, but as his accusers. He loved them dearly. He loved his people. He loved his nation of Israel, and he loved to speak to them. He wanted them to know Jesus. Now, when he is being accused with all this stuff, and Felix actually, after listening with him, he gives Apostle Paul a little bit of freedom. Not too much, but he gave him a measure of freedom. It's kind of similar what we are living right now. Even though we have restrictions due to pandemic worldwide, we have been given a measure of freedom. And some of us, we will be complaining that this measure is not big enough. Some of us will be saying that measure is too big. So there is not a consensus of this measure of freedom. But what are we doing with this measure of freedom that we have? Apostle Paul, because of that measure of freedom, for 2 years he was teaching and preaching and talking about kingdom of God to the house of the governor Felix and the people around them, and even to his wife. He was preaching and teaching about righteousness and everything what God has in store for them. Now, the way how I'm reading, and this is what the questions what came to me. Am I satisfied with the measure of freedom I have right now? Am I satisfied? Or am I complaining? Am I making big stand or big fuss about this? The measure of freedom is given by God to us, and we need to respect what we have right now. Is my freedom expands the kingdom of God? Is that measure of freedom that I have given, is it expanding the kingdom of God? Or am I bringing this complaining of the people about my freedom, what I have? Am I expanding the kingdom of God? Do I seek the opportunity to bring freedom to the unbeliever? Even though I might be restricted with my freedom, but am I bringing the freedom to those who are in bondage and in chains right now, in the chains of anxiety, in the bondage of suffering from mental health, in the bondage of the enemy that brings all these different thoughts, the thoughts of death, the suicide? Am I bringing freedom to them? Or am I restricted on bringing the freedom to them because I feel that I am not having a full freedom? Even though myself under the restrictions, am I bringing the freedom? Obedience gives opportunities that you didn't have before. Apostle Paul did not have a chance to share this full gospel and the kingdom to the Felix's houses and to the people around that area. But now, even though he is restricted in his freedom, even though he has just a certain measure of freedom, he could still spread the gospel. Am I complaining or am I spreading the gospel? Am I complaining or am I being obedient in what I can work? So let us reflect on this. Even though our freedoms are limited, will I take an opportunity to share what God has to share for the people around me? God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow for the next chapter of Book of Acts.